Assalamu alaikum viewers, this is Shahbaz Khan and back here again for you with yet another lecture of my business series. So without further ado, let us get started. So starting the time again with the name of Almighty Allah, who is the most gracious and the most merciful. So business series lecture number 2, and the topic for today that I have chosen is for you to have the importance of business communication or simply communication. So before we get started, let's get the quick reminder of the preceding lecture. In our last lecture, we learned what business is and what communication is, and I asked all of you to form a definition to put in the comment box. Some of you may have tried that. So let us talk about the definition of business communication. When business is an economic activity that allows you to earn profit on one hand, and when communication is a transfer of or share of data or information from one person to another. So it gives a definition in such a way that business communication is the reason to earn profit when it is dealt economically and for economical data sharing. So one definition can be in this way, and many can be formed in multiple other ways. I'll put this once again in a different section, and we'll discuss this definition once we talk about the process of communication once again. So I'm still waiting from your side of the definitions of business communication to be seen on the comment box. So I'll be waiting for that. So without further ado, let us get down to the lecture. That is the importance of communication. So here we go. In other words, the importance of communication can be called the nature or the scope, or nature and the scope of communication. Anyway can be used. And before we get started, one thing I do have to tell my listeners and my viewers globally here, that this particular type of lecture that you can see today and the lecture that you have already received before it are both related to multiple types of levels. If they are related to intermediate level, bachelor's level, and of master's level, and any type of level that can be that you are actually engaged in may follow the same lecture. So whoever has the course of business communication can follow the contents that I'm and have been providing, and I'm ready to provide to you in future as well. So the first thing when we talk about the importance of communication is communication is a process. What processes we'll discuss in detail in my third lecture, but here what I can simply tell you is it's a dealing of two type of people, or two type of aspects. The aspect number one that features person number one, that is sender, and the aspect number two which features person number two, that is the listener or the receiver. When they are engaged together, and when they are engaged by a certain context or through a certain channel, then that's the kind of a process that I'm talking about. So it's that kind of a process. It is inevitable, something that cannot be avoided. It must be that clear and that meaningful that the message, once gets delivered from sender to the listener, cannot be avoided. It is meaning based, as you already have heard in the second point. It could be done both ways, intentionally as well as unintentionally. In the simplest order, when I would want to say, it is always unintentional one way or the other when you're talking to somebody casually. But once you're talking about a certain aspect or any type of aspect professionally, and all about business related point of views, or what can relate any specific ideas, then that communication is always intentional. So in this way, it can be intentional as well as unintentional. It is systematic, no doubt about that. It follows a definite system and a two-way traffic that I've already told you. It contains person one as well as person two, and when the dealing is done between the two, and when things can be understood both ways, then it is called a two-way traffic in this way. It's a social process. It elaborates the society. Exemplifies the people living in the society, and it gathers opinions of the people. So it contains the socialism into it, which makes it a social process. It is a dynamic process. It can't be done by the lowest tone one naturally has to speak with. It must be done quite openly and with quite dynamism, so that that can be heard when the person is found seated way back. So it must be understood, and once it is audible enough, it can simply be understood, and that can only be done when you have a dynamic prospect of speaking. So it is a dynamic process. It is a continuous process, never stops. It involves interaction as well as transaction. When you speak to the audience, you try to engage them. So let's engage them into your communication. In this way, it can become your interaction. And what you do to interact to the people, you transact your ideas toward them. It is a spiraling process. On the other hand, it's an evolving process. It's a moving process. It engages multiple aspects of the world and of the society into a single whole. It is contextual. It's all based upon the concepts and the context for the message one needs to have before he or she gets ready to deliver a certain idea. It needs proper understanding, no doubt, and it allows you to achieve your organizational objective, is specifically applicable to those who are the representatives of a certain organization. You speak for your organization, and to do so you do professional type of communication, and that communication really allows you to get your own heights and betterment, and allows you to raise the mark of your organization who you are representing before the audience and before anybody. It dispels misunderstanding. It removes it quite completely. And it has four specific skills not to forget. Those are the four skills: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. Those are the skills that are always needed for that. It's all pervasive. It's all widespread. It all covers the huge section of dealings, and it shares thoughts, ideas that allow the listeners to generate their feedback. They generate their noise as a result of that. We'll talk about that in detail once we talk about the process of communication in our lecture number 3rd. And it is the lifeblood of business. Without it, almost business is almost nothing. So business has its entity only because of the good communication skills. So this is all for today and for this lecture. So until next time, for my 3rd lecture, when we talk about the process of communication, it is goodbye from my side.